All right, you there?
What's going on, man?
Nothing much. Real quick, can you hear me well? Because a lot of the time with my mic, it comes out of one speaker instead of both.
Oh, no, you sound just fine.
Okay, cool. All right, so basically, and like I said, let's try to keep this under an hour because it gets boring after that. But anyway, so basically to start off, I want to talk about the developers because, I mean, there's all this stuff coming out all the time about the CPU and the sales and them not wanting to port games over there for whatever reason. But the thing with me is that, like, for example, with the PS3, the reason, like, I have a Wii and I used to be on the PC, but the reason why I stick with the PS3 and with Sony pretty much every gen is because I do get the exclusives that I prefer, and at the same time I do get most of the third-party support, you know what I mean? And I understand the Wii U has third-party support, but it's not, you know what I mean? It's not like the general multiplats that you get on every console pretty much. Yeah. And to me, it's just worrisome when you see that games as big as Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty aren't selling that well on the Wii U, and you see that developers, for whatever reason, it's always something different. It may not always be about the CPU or whatever. Sometimes it's about the sales, like with Crytek and whatnot, but it's just worrisome to me for games in the future for the Wii U. Why is it that developers in general just don't want to port games over there? You know what I mean? And it goes back to all the hype surrounding the Wii U. It's like, I talked to people at school the day the Wii U came out, and there was only one guy that knew about it, and he was a techie guy. And, you know, I talked to my sister on the phone, and she knew about it, obviously, because, you know, we talk about stuff like that every once in a while, but she didn't know that it had come out. And then I asked my parents, have they seen anything on the news or anything? And they still wouldn't know anything about it if I hadn't asked them about it. You know what I mean? Whereas with the original Wii and the PS3 and the 360 when they came out, there was stuff all over, everywhere. Everybody at school was talking about it. There was stuff everywhere on TV, whether it was like on news stations or on even like MTV, where they got tons of the stupid teenagers to get along with it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I just don't see the same type of hype surrounding the Wii U as there was with the previous consoles. And in general, that's just worrisome to me, because when you look at how hyped everybody is for the PS4 right now, and that, you know, thing on February 20th or whatever, it's just like, people are so pumped about that. And then even if it has the social features, like the thing where you can record gameplay and post it, then that makes it even more easy for the average consumer. You know what I mean? It's not like they have to go out and find out, you know, about the Hapog or like the Elgato and things like that. They could just do it right then on the spot. And no, like all this stuff about the PS4 all over the internet is getting people hyped, and I can guarantee that it's going to be on news or on the news whenever they have the event, just like with Apple every time. But there was nothing like that for the Wii U. Like, even on, I mean, they had it at E3, but there was nothing special on the news. I mean, even Jimmy Fallon had Reggie on, and he thought that it was a peripheral for the original Wii. And there's just too much confusion going on, and it's just so much stuff there that it's just worrisome to me for the Wii U. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. All right, so that's is that all you wanted to say right now?
Well, for this part, yeah, there's more, but
well, I definitely agree with you on the point that well, there was, like, you know, there was the Wii U in public, like when Reggie went on to that what's that guy's name? That guy's show, whatever, and they're playing the Zombie U. Remember, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, like there was some of that, you know, around this launch, but I definitely agree with you that Nintendo could be doing a much better job on their marketing campaign, because it's like, before launch, yeah, we saw commercials and we saw them, you know, in the news and media and stuff, but it's like after launch, I don't know, like they just kind of like died down with the advertising. But despite all of that, the Wii U still sold 3.06 million in 1 month and a half, which is crazy good. Wii sold 3.5 million in the same time frame. So the Wii U was just behind the Wii. How much would that be? 4.4 thousand. No, not 4.4 thousand. Excuse me, 440,000, which is really good considering how crazy, you know, the Wii was. So if you think about it, the fact that the Wii U wasn't advertised that well, and you really don't see a lot of buzz when you go out, you know, with friends and family, stuff like that, the fact that it still sold 3.06 million without advertisement and without buzz, that's pretty damn impressive. And then just imagine if Nintendo were to get serious about their marketing campaign, not to mention that they don't even have any big titles out yet. We don't have Mario Kart yet. We don't have, the Mario. We don't have a Zelda. None of that. The only things we had at launch was New Super Mario Bros. U and Zombie U. Those two games alone made the Wii U sell 3.06 million in a month and a half. That is crazy good.
All right, can I cut you off right there real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so far with because if I was in the last debate with Nick, then I would have called you out on this, because you mentioned Mario Kart. You said something like they've had like 10, I think it was 10 games in the past like 20 years or whatever. The thing that bothers me about Nintendo, and specifically, I guess you'd say them milking their games, is the fact that it's just that. They have the same franchises over and over again. And even IGN had an article the other day about New Super Mario Brothers, and how, or just those 2D side-scrollers or whatever, and how it's the same thing, but they said that they'll keep buying it regardless, you know what I mean? But it's just the fact that they keep bringing out the same games so frequently, and the problem that I have with it is the fact that they don't come up with those specific developers. If they were so good for so many years to come up with games that big, why is it that they can't just leave that stuff behind for a little bit and try to come up with something new? Whereas with Sony, the reason that I like what they're doing is, and you brought up how they had like, 3 or 4 Uncharted's in this gen alone, but the thing the thing that I favor with that type of model is the fact that they have, it's like, let's compare video games to drug use real quick. Okay. So you have the Nintendo guys where they constantly give you the same thing over and over again. And it gets to the point where you start to get, not that I've taken drugs or anything, like I've never done that, but I'm just saying, it's like they have the same thing constantly, given to you, and eventually your body would wear off to that, you know what I mean? With Nintendo, you get sick of it after a while. But with Sony, they give you that huge fix right then and there on the spot, and then after that, they leave it off for a little while. And like, for example, with Sly Cooper, now they're bringing back one game, and it seems like they're going to end off the series after that for a little bit, you know what I mean? And that's the type of model that I like the best, because it gives you're so pumped for that series for that small amount of time, and they'll give it to you for that amount of time, and then they'll lay off for a little bit, bring in different games, and then after a few years have gone by, they might bring back the other ones again, And that's the problem that I have with Nintendo, just constantly bringing up the same stuff over and over again.
All right, well, I noticed you said one thing that was incorrect. You said that Nintendo brings out these games frequently or whatnot. And you were talking about like Mario Kart. Now I was talking about how it's been out for all these years, and it's only been 10 after all these years, and you said frequency was a problem. I don't see how frequency is the problem when there's only one Mario Kart entry per console. You don't get Mario Kart never gets saturated because we only have one per console. We only get a Mario Kart once every 6 years, for consoles, and one every 6 years or however long the handheld cycles are, then one on the handhelds. So it's really not the same thing as Sony's doing. Uncharted is a new IP, yeah, but it's a new IP that started this gen, and it's already being saturated. Like, there's a reason why that Uncharted 2 is higher rated than Uncharted 3, because Uncharted 3 was a lower, it was a smaller step up than Uncharted 2 was to Uncharted 1.
I'd even go so far as to say Uncharted 3 was a step back. But the thing is with me is that they have the Uncharted series for now, and then they're probably going to have Uncharted 4 for the PS4. Yeah. But I assume at that point they're going to let it go and just move on to something else. I mean, if they're doing The Last of Us right now, I mean, the reason why I think they're going to have Uncharted 4 is because of the fact that they know how to make those games right now. And I remember from the transition from the PS2 to the PS3, Naughty Dog said that it was one of the worst things they've had to go through. And, just transitioning from one console to the next. Oh. And the thing about that is that because Uncharted 1 was a completely different thing from Jak and Daxter. And if they were to have Uncharted 4 for the PS4, it would make things easier for them to transition from one console to the next, because they know the type of game that they're going to make right there on the spot. And then since they have two teams, team that's doing The Last of Us right now, they can judge based off what the other team is doing right now for the PS4 on how to improve on a different game after Uncharted 4. And the thing with Mario Kart is that I get that it's it's one every
It's
gen.
long
I get
between installments, yeah.
yeah. But still, it's the same thing. I'd rather just give them, like I said, that one fix for that short amount of time and then move on to something else afterwards. And then have a gap of like 5 years or whatever before they put out the same game again. You know what I mean?
Is it a short amount of time, though?
Is what?
I mean, like these, Sony franchises and stuff, like God of War has been here since 2005.
Well, yeah, you could make the case though that God of War is specifically for this generation because it was towards the end of the PS2 generation for the first game, and then it was in the middle or like in the beginning of this generation for the second one, and now with this last God of War that's coming out right now, I mean, personally, I've never really been a God of War fan just because I don't care for the hack and slash type of thing, but. And I don't really want them to make another God of War for the next gen because Ascension just. You got to admit though that was impressive, the 30 minutes for it with the scale and everything, but the thing is, it's just I can't see them constantly doing God of War after this gen. Maybe God of War 4 and then move on to something else. But the thing is, at the same time, Santa Monica is doing all these different things. Like on Podcast Beyond the other day, they said that they had credit for like I think 12 games that came out in 2012.
Say it again.
On Podcast Beyond the other day on IGN, they had this thing, like they were talking about stuff for the PS4, and they said something about how Santa Monica had gotten credit for like 12 different games in 2012, because they have so many, like, they get involved in so many different projects, basically, that I guess you could say, yes, God of War is like their main thing, but they do so many different things as well. And like I said, I can't see them continuing God of War for too much after this next one.
So, basically, your whole thing is you don't like Nintendo because Nintendo keeps using the same IPs, and you like Sony because they get new IPs and they cycle through them faster than Nintendo does.
Yeah, and then move on to other things. But at the same time, I don't hate Nintendo. I mean, the thing is, I hate Microsoft because I feel like they just rip people off with the Xbox. But the Wii, I mean, I have a Wii, and it's fun to play it with my sister and whatnot, but on my own, like things like Zelda, the problem that I have with Zelda Twilight Princess, which I haven't gotten deep in that at all, is, and this is another point that I was going to get to, is the controls. With the Wii U, or with the original Wii, with the motion controls, they had the same button to move the camera behind Link, was the same button to lock onto something. And then when you want to get into a battle and you want to move the camera behind him, then it can get really frustrating when you just want the camera behind him and instead it keeps locking onto the enemies all around you, and it's just frustrating, you know?
Oh, well, dude, if you want to just put the camera behind you, you just tap Z. When you want to lock on, you hold it down.
Well, I would just tap it. No, I know, but I would just tap it and it would lock onto the enemy.
I don't know, I guess something was wrong with your nunchuck or something, but...
Yeah, I don't know. But real quick, I have to ask you something, because with the original Wii, they had the classic controller, right? Now, with that controller, did they have a cordless version of it?
No first party ones, no.
Okay. See, and that was the main problem that I had, was my Wii is on a different TV. It's on our old regular, CRT TV.
Yeah, standard def, yeah.
Yeah, and then the PS3 is on the HD TV. And with the Wii, we had it on the top of the home entertainment setup and whatnot. And if you were to have the classic controller plugged in, like with the cushioning, like the cushions and whatnot, like 20 feet away from the TV, then it just doesn't work out with that. And that's the problem that I have with Nintendo in general, is that they keep, with the motion controls, they screw that up, because I would like Zelda more if they just had a regular controller that could, just mess around with it like that. And then with the Wii U, I mean, yes, they have the Pro Controller, but again, they have the stupid gamepad with the touchscreen and everything. And I don't get why they keep trying to fix what isn't broken. And that's one of the biggest problems that I have with them right now, because it even makes things more difficult for developers later on. And that was one of the reasons that they didn't have so many games for the Wii ported to them, because it's just frustrating for the developers to make a game that's supposed to be equal on all platforms, but they don't want to change things for the motion controls.
All right, can I cut you off right there?
Yeah.
All right, what did you say about like your distance from the TV and the classic controller?
Because the cord wouldn't be long enough for where I'm sitting at, especially on the top of
the classic controller plugs into the Wii remote.
Into the Wii remote? Okay, I thought it was on the actual Wii itself.
No.
Okay, well that.
Did
all right, that fixes that.
Like...
See, and that's another thing is that Nintendo, they have so many different peripherals that it's not clear exactly for how to use a lot of these things. Like, I honestly thought that was to plug into the Wii.
No, dude.
All right, I guess you got me there.
Can't talk about a controller you never used. I mean...
Yeah, no, I know. That's why I wanted to ask beforehand, because I thought it was like that, but whatever.
But on to what you're talking about, how Nintendo is complicating, things, and they're trying to fix what's not broken. It's not fixing what's broken. It's improving what's already, good. And really, I don't see what's so hard about having a screen on a controller. You could take any game, port it over to the Wii U. You don't have to do something that's unique and crazy with the screen. You really don't have to. Nintendo's not even forcing the screen on developers. That's why they're supporting, that's why the Classic Controller Pro, the Wii U Pro controller. And, if a dev has absolutely no idea what to do with the screen, all they have to do is just turn the screen off during gameplay and just have the gamepad function as a normal controller. And it's as simple as that. What's so complicated about a screen? Let's say, you have Metal Gear Solid Revengeance. Not Metal Gear Solid, but Metal Gear Revengeance. And they're trying to port it over to the Wii U. Why would they sit there and be like, we can't put this on this system? There's a screen in the controller. See what I'm saying? There's nothing physically stopping them from doing that. There's nothing. Nothing at all. How is that a roadblock or a problem?
Well, the fact that if they're not going to use the screen, then it's pretty much pointless to even have the screen, which gets back to why in the world would
multiplat though?
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying, why would you get a Wii or a Wii U for like the 5 games or whatever, like the Nintendo, the big first party games that are the only ones that would even use it?
And third party.
Yeah, but I'm saying that when I tried it out at Best Buy, I honestly just forgot that the screen was even there because it's just not necessary. And the thing that I don't like is the fact that
Rayman, no.
What'd you say?
I said not for Rayman, no. It's not necessary.
Yeah, but anyway, what was my train of thought? I can't remember. But anyway, let's forget about that for a second. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about was recently those news about Iwata saying that he's going to step down. I mean, that's another thing. Like I said before with the buzz and the developers and whatnot, the thing with Iwata is just troublesome as well because the thing is, all the Nintendo fanboys were the ones that originally bought the Wii U when it came out. I mean, you expect them to go get it first. And then afterwards, that's when everybody else is supposed to go get it, but nobody is getting it right now. And now, when I see that Iwata is thinking of stepping down, it's another thing where, like I said, it's just troublesome to see what's going to happen with Nintendo's future with that console.
Well, firstly, he never actually said that he would step down. People pretty much implied, that he was saying that. And I can understand where they're coming from, but he never necessarily said that. Now, about the whole, sales dying down. Hold on, my headset's about to die. Plug it in. Okay, but, where was I talking about? Oh, yeah, the sales, dying down after, December or whatever. If you go back and look at charts, from pretty much anywhere in gaming history, when the new year hits, all sales go down for everything. That includes, the consoles and the software itself because everybody already done broke their money, on the holiday season and everything. If you were paying attention to the charts, see, a lot of people, they were just paying attention to the Wii U numbers, like, oh my God, the Wii U numbers plummeted. But if they would, stop just, targeting, just looking at Nintendo, they would have realized that the 360 sales plummeted too, the PS3 sales did, the 3DS sales did, everything did. Every single time January hits, every new gen, the sales plummet compared to, you know, the last year during holiday season. That's natural. That's just how it is. And also, you know, we already know this. You know, nobody's disputing this, but you know, everybody has beaten, you know, the launch games, and those who don't own the Wii U right now, they pretty much aren't interested in, you know, Zombie New Super Mario Bros. U, or else they would already own one. So it's not that people don't care for the Wii U. It's just that a lot of people are just waiting for the games to come down the line, which, you know, we both know the games are coming, and it's a shit ton of them. So the sales are going to be just fine. And don't forget that we had this same situation with the 3DS. The 3DS came out with a just okay, you know, launch lineup, really nothing there besides, you know, Street Fighter and Pilot Wings. You know, if you're into those kinds of games, those, you know, not a flight sim, but, you know, and things of that nature. And then it did decent sales, you know, its first couple of months, but eventually they dropped off because Nintendo didn't release any compelling software, you know, and the big titles they were talking about, like Mario Kart and Mario Land and Star Fox, you know, 64 3D, those weren't coming until the fall. So it's really basically all what I'm saying here is, you know what I'm saying. The system's been out for just a little bit over 2 months now. It hasn't had anything new come out. Its exclusives hasn't even started rolling yet. Like, it's not that big of a deal. Nintendo and the Wii U are going to be just fine.
Well, the thing is, first off, the things are different for handhelds from, like, home consoles, you know what I mean? But the other thing is, with the third-party support with the Wii U, like, the third-party exclusives, I mean, there are games like Bayonetta that nobody really cared for all that much when the first Bayonetta came out. And now all of a sudden everybody on the internet is hyping up Bayonetta, but I have a feeling that it's going to sell probably just as bad, if not worse than the first one did, like, on one console for the first game.
When did 1 million sales become bad?
No, but for a game that's that hyped up, because, I mean, people talk about how Infamous's sales were that bad, but Infamous 1 had, I think, over 2 million, and Infamous 2 eventually got over 1 million.
Who said Infamous's sales were bad?
No, you know, everybody was always talking about that on this site. I can't name specifically one person.
I honestly don't remember. It must have been some, like, 360 Republic dudes.
Dude, by the way, real quick, I just feel like, I just thought of this right now, talking about fanboys. Nintendo blocked me after one comment on his new channel. It just shows how sensitive a lot of these people get. But I didn't even say anything, but so that's the thing with the third-party support. It's like they have these games that nobody really cared. I mean, the third-party exclusives, I keep mixing that stuff up. But they have these games that nobody really cared about the first time around. I honestly can't see them selling that well the second time around now, especially when games as big as Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty aren't selling that well on the Wii U. And I understand that a lot of these people are going to buy them for the PS3 and 360, but at the same time, if they're trying to get them on the Wii U to sell, I mean, if they're putting them on the Wii U, they obviously expect them to sell. But if they're not selling, then what's the point of even bringing them on the Wii U? You know what I mean?
Well, of course they're going to sell dramatically lower on a dramatically lower install base, dude. It's a new console that launched, not to mention, you know, Assassin's Creed 3 came out a month before the Wii U even launched.
I understand that. But and it was the same thing with the PC, though. It came out later, but obviously the PC still does fairly well in general when games come out on there.
Because the PC has a huge-ass install base, yeah.
Well, yeah, that's true, but I'm just saying... I know, but I'm just saying...
elitists, you know, who want the superior version.
Okay, real quick, let me ask, how many sales exactly has the Wii U sold? Because I've seen 4 million, I've seen 5 million, I've seen 2 million.
Just go with Nintendo's report, 3.06.
Okay.
Well, 3.06 since December. That's not counting the January sales. So for all we know, yeah, it could be at, you know, over 4 million by now.
Okay, so let's compare the 6,000 on Assassin's Creed to the 6 million on the... Or it was 4.5 million on the PS3.
6,000?
Or 60,000, my bad. I heard it was 60,000.
It's not 60,000.
Because on VG charts, it was either 50 or 60,000.
You looked a long time ago, because I'm looking at it right now. It's at 11,000. I'm not 11,000. Yeah, 11,000.
Okay. Well, anyway, that's still fairly bad. And then with Call of Duty Black Ops, I remember Zaire said that it was... How many people was on? Maybe that was the 6,000, and I mixed the two things up.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. But anyway, And then the last thing that I had was the lack of originality with Nintendo's games. Is that, like I said earlier, with those first-party developers that keep bringing out those, games that they constantly, that everybody knows, the things we were saying. I just wish that they would come up with different IPs, because when you look at, because a lot of people have trolled, The Last of Us and saying it's like The Last of Uncharted. When you really look at it, it's like a playable movie that's mixed with stealth, horror, and action. You know what I mean? And it's something that is fairly new, and the melee combat in that is completely different. And if first-party developers for Sony can bring up games like that, as well as Infamous that was completely new and like an actual good superhero game, then that's the thing that frustrates me about Nintendo, is that they just keep bringing out the same games, not necessarily the exact same, but you know what I mean, the same characters and whatnot. And I know Zelda's been different and all that, but by the way, talking about Zelda, nobody buys Zelda, dude. It's the same, like 5 or 6 million for every Zelda game. Like, it never goes up. But that was the thing I just thought, like, bringing that up real quick. I just remembered it. But that's the thing, is with these Sony developers, like I said, they have new games that they bring out every gen, but at the same time, it's not like they try to innovate at the same time. It's not like Nintendo where they use the hardware to try to innovate, but the games themselves are still fairly similar.
Are they, though? That's the question. When you look at the Galaxy games and compare them to 64 and Sunshine, totally different. When you look at Metroid Other M, totally different. When you look at Kirby Epic Yarn, completely different. So are they really the same games over and over again?
For the most part, it's not with Mario Galaxy, but
now Mario Kart, yeah, I can understand where you're coming from, but all the other games, no.
The thing is, though, with the Metroid, they had different people working on that game as well. It wasn't just, the people that made the other Metroid games. And also with what was the other game? Oh yeah, Kirby's Epic Yarn. They're doing a very similar thing now with Yoshi, with that new Yoshi game. And it's that type of thing where they should have just left the Kirby thing and then try to do something different with the Yoshi game rather than having it so similar to the Kirby game.
Yoshi was actually already like that. Yoshi's Island on the 64, it had the whole like patches and stitches like art style and stuff. A lot of people don't know that, and they thought that Nintendo was somehow ripping off Little Big Planet style or something like that. But yeah, Yoshi actually already had that art style.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to bring up the fact that, like, I didn't even think of Little Big Planet with that, but the other thing, continuing on with that specific thing with those Yoshi and Kirby games, is the fact that it seems like every new Nintendo game, including the Donkey Kong one, was just another 2D side-scroller. And it just gets old after a while.
It's a Donkey Kong Country game. Yeah, it's going to be a side-scroller, dude.
Yeah, but it's just every game that they have on the Wii or the Wii U is constantly 2D side-scrollers. And because personally, my favorite games are the 3D platformers. So I wish that they would just do more of those instead of more and more of these 2D platformers, when they couldn't even get Mario Brothers U to the same visual fidelity as the Ratchet and Clank trilogy on the PS3 was. Now, I don't know if that was because they didn't have enough time to work on it or what, but they should have had time to work on it because it's a Nintendo first-party game.
I made a video on this, and I said it so myself. The new Super Mario games, they're pretty damn lazy. They're pretty damn lazily put together, in my opinion. That's just the way I've always viewed it, because, I don't know, the way I see it, they've never really put that much effort into those games. So, and I mean, it is a 2D Mario side-scroller. So it's a 2D Mario side scroller. They're not gonna put in like these high end graphics into a 2D side scrolling Mario game.
No, I understand, but at the same time, you'd think that they would at least be able to get that. If a 3D platformer on the PS3 was able to do that, why couldn't they do it with a 2D platformer? Because it was always rumored beforehand that they were gonna do it, but at the end of the day, they didn't.
Well, we know they can. They just didn't.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, why wouldn't they? If they were themselves were hyping it up so much that it was gonna do that, and then at the end of the day it didn't, I mean, I don't, there's just too much stuff with the Wii U that's just shady at this point. Like specifically this that we talked about, but also like what I said earlier with the developers, like there's so many developers that just for whatever reason, you know, whether it be the CPU or the sales or whatever, they just don't want to port games to the Wii U. And it wasn't like that with the PS3 and 360, from what I remember at least, where they had games like Splinter Cell, and they had Madden and things like that as well. And I mean, I understand that they weren't exactly, the Madden games specifically exactly weren't as good as the PS2, but they were still fairly good. It wasn't like FIFA where, on the Wii U, where they basically took the previous version's game, or like the previous year's game.
It's not the Wii U's fault, dude.
No, I know, but I'm just saying that's the thing that worries me is that, again, there's just too much stuff there that's shady. Like, why is it that these developers aren't doing that?
It's Nintendo. Simply put, they're a lot of developers were burned after the whole, you know, Wii saga and everything because of dramatically underpowered hardware and things of that nature. So a lot of developers, as of right now, they're, you know, they basically Nintendo, you know, has to gain their trust and respect back, and it boils down to simply that.
And at the same time, it's hard for them to get that trust back when you hear about, like, all these rumors about the PS4 and the Xbox 720 supposedly being so much more powerful. Like, even that one rumor that came out in, like, the beginning of December or whatever, where Infinity Ward supposedly was going to make Modern Warfare 4 for the PS4 and 720, and then Treyarch was going to make it for the Wii U, PS3, and 360. Like, when you see things like that, I mean, it's hard to believe that Nintendo will win over the developers. You know what I mean?
In that same rumor, though, they also listed other multiplats that were Wii U, PS4, and 720.
Well, yeah, but I'm just saying that at the same time, when you see things like that, it's still worrisome. I mean, they may have those other games on there, but when you see that they have games like that, like Call of Duty isn't even that demanding. And I understand that they're lazy over at Activision, but I'm just saying, it's worth bringing up.
And also, you know, not to mention, Treyarch has, Infinity Ward really doesn't have any experience with Nintendo consoles. Treyarch has pretty much done, you know, all the Call of Duties on the Nintendo console, so I would say that's pretty much the reason why. Not because of dramatically underpowered hardware, because, like you just said yourself, you know, it's Call of Duty. You know they're not going to make this, you know, a high-end Unreal Engine, you know, 7, you know, Call of Duty game, but if that rumor, you know, is true, I would chop that up to simply Infinity Ward saying, hey, Treyarch, you know, you guys have more experience with the Nintendo console, you know. Treyarch is the one who ported Call of Duty 4, you know, onto the Wii and made Call of Duty 4 Reflex, you know, and they have a much better relationship with Nintendo. So that has nothing to do with specs. I'm pretty sure that just has to do with the relationship between Treyarch and Nintendo.
Yeah, that
and
makes sense.
Their knowledge, you know, of the Nintendo systems.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then the last thing that I basically had was when you look at games that, like the bigger games on the PS3 and 360 right now, a lot of them are shooters. And the thing is with the Wii U, I mean, the Wii had the motion controls. That was the thing to grab tons of people to get onto the bandwagon for the original Wii. But with the Wii U, if the controller itself, everybody says, is fairly difficult to deal with shooters and it just doesn't feel right for it, then they're obviously not going to be making that many shooters for it. And then when you have games like Gran Turismo and Forza for the PS3 and 360, there's no real, I guess you'd say, racing simulator like that for the Wii U or for Nintendo in general. And I do like kart racing games, but there's a difference between those two. And I'd like to see them do something like that more along those lines instead of, you know, trying to get games like Bayonetta where, I mean, at the end of the day, people, in the grand scheme of things, people don't really care about it.
So how exactly is the gamepad, how is that hampering first-person shooters? I could definitely understand what you were saying with racing sims, you know, with the digital triggers and everything. But, you know, at the same time, Nintendo doesn't have a racing sim, so of course they wouldn't really care. Although there is that Project Cars game, but, you know, that's a third party or whatever. But yeah, I can understand what you mean by the gamepad and the racers. You know, I talked to Nick about this, but how's the gamepad holding back FPSs?
in general, I just didn't think it was very comfortable, and I've seen articles online where people complain about how it might not feel ideal for shooters, especially with the way that, I mean, I have pretty big hands, but at the same time, like, I can palm a basketball easy, and I feel like the Wii U gamepad is still a bit big. You know?
What?
I know, it may sound weird, but it's the truth. And it's just, it just doesn't feel right a lot of the time, especially when you're used to having the traditional controller. And again, I know you could go to the Pro controller, but I'd rather not have to spend extra money to play a specific type of game. You know, like I said, it's just all these different peripherals and all these different things that Nintendo tries to do, along with the ambiguity for a lot of things. It's just frustrating at the end of the day, and it makes me just not want to get back onto the Nintendo ship.
Well, this particular topic right here is pretty much down to your preference and opinion, so I really can't, debate that or anything, because that's just you not liking the controller. But, like, really, when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, there's nothing about that controller that's hampering the FPS genre. The people get so stuck on the screen, and they don't look at the gamepad, and they don't stop and notice that it's a regular controller. Like, it really is. It has your D-pad, it has your 2 sticks, it has your 4 shoulder buttons, it has your 4 face buttons. Only difference, it has a screen in the middle. So I don't see how it's hampering the shooter genre on the Wii U. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. Now, if it's a matter of, you think it's too big and you're not comfortable for it, like I said, that's a matter of opinion, for you. But you can't say that that is a factual thing, that it's hampering the FPS genre.
But then when you look at the fact that if you use, I think it's 2 gamepads on the same system, something like that, I can't remember exactly how it was, but it drops the frame rate, that can be problematic for any game.
Kind of like how split screen has always been?
Well, but the thing is, if a game runs at 30 frames and then they make it so that it drops down to like 15 from something like that, then it shows that, especially with how overpriced the gamepad is, it just seems completely pointless for them to even have the gamepad on there. Like, for them to have even created it, really, I mean, is what I'm trying to get at. Like, I think they should have just stayed with a regular controller.
Well, like I said, split screen has always been like that. That has nothing to do with a second controller that has a screen in it. When you're displaying multiple screens, there's going to be drops in frames. Another thing, you assume that a game would be 30, frames per second. It could be a 60 frame per second FPS. My third point is there could be no drops in frames at all. All they could have to do is drop the graphical fidelity of the game, like most split screen shooters do. When you're playing like Halo split screen or something like that, or Conduit or something like that, you'll notice they'll drop the graphical fidelity of the game to keep the frame rate going. So at the end of the day, using a second gamepad, it's no different from playing with 3 people split screen. That's what we've been doing since the N64 days. So you really can't complain about that. You can't make that out to be some Wii U specific thing, because that's just how it is. Split screen is split screen. There's going to be drops in frames. And then, like I said, it could be a 60 FPS shooter. And then, like I said, they could just drop the graphical fidelity of the game to make sure that the frame rate stays constant.
Well, yeah, but the thing is, with so many games, when you do the split screen, it doesn't really drop that much. And I understand that you say they changed the graphics to not be as powerful, but when there are all these people talking about how if you have 2 gamepads and it drops the frames by half, I mean, it just doesn't sound appealing. And it sounds like there may be more to it. Something that the general public may not know. Now, I'm not saying like Microsoft Illuminati or anything like that, but I'm just saying, it's more stuff that's just shady about it.
That's how split screen has always been, dude.
Like, I get that, but I'm saying like, no, but I'm saying that with I'm just repeating myself at this point with the 2 gamepads and whatnot dropping the frames, but anyway, that's basically that. Is there anything else?
You You had the topics. You tell me.
Nah, like I said, that was basically it.
All right, man. That's all you wanted to talk about?
Yep.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thank you for being my first intelligent debater. I appreciate that. It was actually entertaining for me, and not in the bad way.
Yeah.
Dude, appreciate that, man.
I'm not even joking, dude. There was I started this new commentary series, and there was some moron that got on that video. He got upset by that Bayonetta video that I made, which was obviously a joke. And he gets on that commentary video, and it was an Uncharted gameplay, and he's like, the graphics in this game suck. And I'm like, dude, why do you care about the graphics? It's a commentary. And he's like, if you're going to do a commentary, just talk over a black screen. Like, I hope he was trolling, dude, but...
A black screen.
It's just sad.
That's called the podcast.
Yeah.
Basically.
Man. But anyway, I guess you got me on the thing about the Wii with the classic controller. The thing is, I didn't even know much about it. That's why I even tried to get more info ahead of time. I thought you plugged that thing in. Don't you plug in the GameCube controller into the console?
Yeah, you plug in the GameCube controllers, yeah.
Okay, I thought it worked the same way as that.
No, dude.
Okay.
No.
Alright, well, that's basically that.
Alright, man. Appreciate talking to you.
Alright, later, dude.
Alright, see you.